Butch Jones is building a talented roster at Tennessee, but is he building a winner? Well, the two may not necessarily connect in 2014, and we'll tell you why. Mark Rogers TV continuing our series looking at every team's schedule among the Power 5 conferences, and we stop in Knoxville with a football program that is very proud but very down and has been for quite some time. But things are looking up. The recruiting rankings tell us that Tennessee is stockpiling talent to compete in the SEC Eastern Division. Look at this schedule, though, in 2014. So a 5-7 campaign in Butch Jones' first year in Knoxville may not improve in 2014, although I expect the Vols to be much better and more competitive against the best teams, building off that South Carolina win in Knoxville last season. Look at this non-conference slate. For as many times as I like to rip some big teams for not scheduling big opponents, Tennessee does it, and they've done it throughout their history. They went up to Oregon last season and lost by 45 points, but credit them. The 10th, 11th, 12th best team in the SEC going to Oregon, arguably the best team in the Pac-12, and taking a beating. All right, Butch Jones lines it up for this. Utah State in the opener, and the Aggies are no joke. 11-2 2 seasons ago under head coach Matt Wells. Just a little plug here. We've interviewed the coach twice here on Mark Rogers TV. Check out those interviews leading into 2013. Matt Wells of Utah State, building on what Gary Anderson did there before he moved on to Wisconsin. The Aggies got beat around a little bit in the Mountain West for the mid-season portion of their schedule, but they rebounded, won their division, went to the Mountain West championship game, beat Northern Illinois, a team that we've seen on the BCS radar the last two seasons. So Utah State with a very tough defense. Now they lose a ton of people. The reason they lost 5 games last season basically was because of the quarterback situation, Chucky Keaton. But check out the games at USC and other quality opponents. Utah State is nothing to bypass here on the schedule. August 31st in Knoxville, Utah State taking on Tennessee. Arkansas State's a good team. Talk about plugs. We just interviewed their coach, Blake Anderson, a couple weeks ago. Check out that interview. Very informative on the 5th coach in 5 seasons for Arkansas State. Tennessee should be able to get by Arkansas State. If the Vols can't do that, then there is big trouble. But again, they're taking on the co-champion of the Sun Belt Conference in Arkansas State, so nothing to bypass there. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is the one in terms of non-conference play that everybody in the state of Tennessee that wears orange just about every day of the year is circling. Oklahoma at Norman. Now, the Sooners might be a little bit overrated. Most people have them in their top 5. I am not necessarily sold to that degree. Of course, there's the Alabama victory in the Sugar Bowl. That's what everybody points to. A couple weeks before that, though, Oklahoma looked very marginal in getting past Oklahoma State, pulling some smoke and mirrors and getting past that game, a game in which they were dominated by the Cowboys for 3 quarters. They looked awful on the big stage against Baylor, losing that game by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Oklahoma is a very talented, very good football team. Top 5 in the nation. I need to see that. I'm going to say top 10 to 15 in the nation. Still look to be a decided favorite, especially at home against Tennessee and the Vols, looking for a big win on the road for the first time in forever. Tennessee fans, let me know when that was. Can't think of it off the top of my head. Must have been in the 06-07 range. 08, the last time Tennessee competed in the SEC. Okay, that's the game everybody's looking at right there. Oklahoma hosting Tennessee. Then they dive right into the conference play with Georgia, Florida, 2 old nemesis there. Georgia's going to be a decided favorite at home against Tennessee. Then that Florida game, and we talked about this when we looked at the Gators schedule. Florida, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Missouri. Got to compare those programs as being on the same plane. Now, I know Missouri won 12 games and went to the SEC title game last season. Vandy's coming off a couple 9-4 campaigns, while Florida was just 4-8 last season and Tennessee 5-7 and has been down for about 5 years. But in terms of the talent on the roster, in terms of the recruiting bases, in terms of the resources, in terms of where they are right now, yes, Florida has the huge ceiling, Tennessee a little bit less. Missouri and Vandy, it's going to be difficult for them to keep up over the long haul, but I consider those programs on the same plane. In the Eastern Division, it's South Carolina and Georgia right now, Tennessee, Vandy, Mizzou, and Florida on that next plane, and then Kentucky, despite the nice recruiting classes the last 2 years under Mark Stoops, are holding up the bottom of the SEC East. So these are games that Tennessee has to win. Taking on Florida at home. Got to win that game. Okay, Chattanooga, that should be a win. Back in conference play against Ole Miss, on the road in Oxford. A very winnable game, but the Rebels are going to be tough with Bo Wallace back at quarterback. Then they've got the traditional rivalry with Alabama. And if you listen to our video post here when we're previewing these schedules, the big thing in the SEC to look at is who are you playing in the other division. So everybody plays the same games within the division. Then you've got that crossover opponent that is consistent, that rival team from the other division. And for Tennessee, it's legit in Alabama. The other game that they've got on the other side is Ole Miss. We just talked about it with the Rebels. Okay, so it's a decent game for Tennessee. It's winnable. They could have lucked out and played Arkansas, but they didn't get that draw. So it's a round-robin format, and Tennessee draws Ole Miss this season on the road. Again, Alabama the next week at home. Then they go to South Carolina again, like Georgia, going to be a substantial underdog, I would think, at that point. But, you know, we're looking 8 games into the season. Who knows what's going to shake out at that point. Then they finish down the stretch at home with Kentucky, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. They've got to have a big push at the end to make a bowl game. That would be huge for Tennessee to get 6 wins, win a bowl game. Okay, in the non-conference play, Utah State, Arkansas State, Oklahoma, Chattanooga. At the very least, they've got to win 2 of those 4 games. They really need to win 3. They need to win the game against Utah State. Can't count on upsetting Oklahoma, although I wouldn't be shocked. Go 3-1 in the non-conference play. Then they can win 3 more and go 3-5 in the SEC. I think it's very doable for the Vols, despite this rugged schedule that they've carved out for themselves in non-conference play, to make it to a bowl game. If you compare Tennessee's schedule and Vandy's schedule, they're basically the same in conference play. Then what happens out of conference? Vandy plays nobody. They're going to go 4-0 non-conference. Tennessee could possibly slip to 2-2 if Utah State pulls the upset in Knoxville, but they should go 3-1. So they're giving up for quality opponents, and I credit them there. They're giving up wins in terms of getting to postseason play. So Tennessee's going to be on the edge here. Again, the key games that they have to win are against those teams that are on their same level at this point. Mizzou, Florida, and definitely in addition to that have to be Kentucky. And again, Mizzou and Florida, Vanderbilt as well. And they've got Kentucky, Mizzou, and Vandy down the stretch. Finish strong, Butch Jones. You'll get to postseason play. And Tennessee fans, let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.